Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith, and I'm with Conversation with Friends that you probably already know. It airs on the Brahma Kumari's Miami meditation site. And I just want to say that I'm really, really thrilled to be here to interview someone, and his name is Sri Prabha. And Sri is a multidisciplinary artist. He works in just about every form that you could imagine. But the amazing part about it is he takes all of the different art forms, whether it's sculpture, whether it's paintings, whether it's digital music, and kind of puts them all together in this in this way that you really have an experience. And that's what happened to me last weekend when I said, I'm going to go see his exhibition before I interview him. And so I went and I was blown away. I really was. And because I found it to be an experience, and I found it to be something that it was so, like, I just wanted to sit there or walk around actually, and kind of take it all in, because there are just so many things in flow, and so much that you could spend a day there, seeing what he has put together. So it's quite amazing. We're gonna hear from you, right? Sri, I'm happy to have you on the show to get to interview you. And I just want to start with, how did you come upon this whole idea of this? I mean, I know it's been done in terms of artists can work in different art forms, right? But yours kind of takes it to another level, as far as I'm concerned. It's a lot coming at you, but yet it has real form to it. It has a purpose. It's not just a lot of things string together, right?
Right,
So
right.
tell
So,
me.
yeah,
Yeah.
Meredith, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you and uh, talk about my exhibit. So, kind of what I do is I bring in a lot of different elements, a lot of different media, and it becomes a concise experience. I've been doing this for many years, and to kind of put it in a nutshell, I take a lot of ideas from deep time history, anthropological ideas, scientific ideas, as well as Eastern philosophy, not just Indian, because that's my background, but also I
Mhm.
borrow from Chinese history, as well as Native American. So a lot of these beliefs that are rooted and connected to nature and the processes that happen that people have observed. So in a way, I dig into the cultural, anthropological beliefs from different older cultures, synthesize those, and I also put them in contrast to our more current scientific explorations, taking things from the James Webb telescope or the Hubble, kind of things that they're finding about life in space and how it may have come to Earth. And where does this lead us? So the question really is for me is to look at all these processes that are happening, both culturally and on the scientific side, and put them together. And art, for me, is a medium that can integrate these different kind of really not directly connected elements or areas of study, but I can bring those together and it forms a new language. And I also say that because I'm often asked, what did you mean by this? How did this exhibit come along? And I try to, at the best of my skills, to put it in a language, and that being English, obviously, right now. But I find that there's a lot of subtleties that get lost in translating what the experience is like into a verbal language. You have to go there to get the nuances of so many things that are happening and at so many layers that exist to tease apart. It's like an onion, there's so many layers happening. But at the same time, I'm very careful in terms of how a viewer might interact and exist in the space. So I give the person, when they go there, enough room to be themselves and explore and take in the wonder of it.
That is the word. To me, that describes exactly what
Mhm.
I saw at your
Yeah.
exhibition, wonder. So why don't we show a few of the works that are on display at the Boca Raton Museum of Art? Where else, of course? Boca Raton, right?
Right.
Um,
And
and
it's
these are
on
all,
until October 22nd.
oh, it is. So people have
It's up for a
time.
while.
Oh, that's great. That's great to know that. Yeah, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's at the end and it's too late, you know, you
Yeah.
can tell people, but yeah. Could show a couple more, and there's a lot. There's a lot. It took, like I said, I felt for me, this was like a journey, you know, and there were moments where I just felt, I felt kind of like that magical feeling,
Mhm.
like I was having an experience, and I really didn't want to leave. I just kept walking around. Sometimes I just sat there. Sometimes I just sort of got close to one of the installations, and I felt something. I really feel today that people, there's so many words out there, you know, there's so much information constantly. We're bombarded with so much information. And my feeling is that's what people really want, don't they? They want some kind of an inner experience. They don't
Right.
know
So
how to get it. We don't always, or, we don't always know how to get
yeah,
that experience.
yeah, it's interesting with all the too much noise out there too, because even when I'm making an exhibit like this, I'm very careful in terms of what I'm absorbing because I want the idea to be very specific
Mhm.
and I don't want the noise to intrude on my process and therefore show up in the exhibit. So it's a very like, as I'm making it, I'm very focused on like it needs to have these elements in it, and I can't let these other random elements in. And at the same time, while you're there, there's a lot of video going on at this, in this exhibit. The stills don't really
Mhm.
do it justice.
Mhm.
If you go to my website, there'll be more video of the installation, so you can kind of get the feel for it, but it's constantly changing, but it's changing rather subtly, kind of it's not jarring. It's kind of it's a journey. I want people to be able to
Mhm.
go in there on a journey as well as there's sound elements and it just kind of takes you in and again opens it's like in a meditative space where you're open to receive whatever the universe might trigger in that space for you.
Beautiful. I felt very safe there. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes at exhibitions, and I do happen to love to see art, but sometimes it's just I'm going from one painting to another, or sculptures, and I go, oh wow, that's great, that's great, that's great. But I'm moving on to the next one. That's what you do in a museum, right?
Yeah.
But with you, with your exhibition, it was more like I can just sit here or walk around and just kind of experience all of this. There's, a lot coming at you, but it's coming at you very gently.
Right.
And it isn't, it's not noisy, a lot of noise. It's beautiful sounds, and the artwork is just spectacular. I think the
Thank
colors.
you.
There's
Thank
something
you.
about colors, right?
Yeah,
And
I really focused on the colors, and I also have a degree in clinical psychology, so I was a therapist briefly. So,
for how
I
long
put
were you with there?
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, I put myself in the person's shoe and have empathy for what they may be feeling. And again, when you say safe space, a lot of times artists forget to give that safe space to the viewer when they're in an installation. I've been to other installations where they're good, but they're kind of dry, or they're just very like, sterile, or there's something is kind of the humanity of it is somehow missing, um, technically and um, in terms of context and art theory, it's good, but there's some other element completely gone. So for me, how I make things is the intellectual part and the emotional part, the spiritual part, all have to coexist. And I think after a certain time doing this for so long, I just was like to the point where I really need to give all my work a spiritual component, regardless of what the rest of the art world cares or thinks, because sometimes they're on a completely different plane, which doesn't give space to the spiritual component of an artwork.
I'm wondering, I mean, when one is an artist, and I'm not an artist, my mother was a very good artist, but
Mm,
I mean, she didn't pursue it enough in her life. She
sure.
had other things she was doing, so it wasn't, but but art is can be a religion for the artist, right? It's can be almost like,
It's a
that's,
practice, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if sometimes that could get in the way, that you're not really able to, yeah, it's a practice, but maybe you're not looking at the bigger picture. You're just looking at doing great art, doing, a really things that, do have impact. But I feel with you is, and you just said it in a way, that you started out as a therapist, which is so interesting, that maybe you were kind of searching inside before
Yeah, it was
you
back and
started
forth.
the
I
work.
started off, in the arts and then went into therapy and then went back to art because I found that the therapeutic medium was too constricting to affect change on a bigger scale and to reach
Mm,
people that I would not reach anyway in that field because certain demographic populations don't want to go to therapy.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is a big thing, and people are suffering today, people are going through experiences. You might not know it if you see someone, in the supermarket or even a friend,
Mhm.
but a lot of people are searching for something because they're
They're
not
searching
feeling
for
satisfied.
something and to give them, I've always thought of like, if you're going to do something that benefits humanity at some level. And, to that extent, I also do some public art projects and things that you would encounter not in the museum, but kind of somewhere on the corner of a street.
Mm-mm.
So some of those projects, I've done quite a few of those too. And, it's kind of balancing out in terms of what my practice is doing some of that, doing some of the stuff in museums and other, public art specific indoor projects, that kind of thing. So there's like a panoply of things that I engage in for my practice in terms of how I come to it. But yeah, it's becoming a therapist and going back to the arts gave me another level of understanding of what generally, if you just have a regular art education, you may not understand how your viewer is viewing what you're making. It may be
Mhm.
really good work, but it may not connect on a humanistic level at some and that's what's missing in my opinion, the critique of contemporary art. A lot of it is missing the humanistic level. And that my opinion, other people may disagree with that, but I've been making art for 30 plus years and I've kind of seen
Mhm.
the whole spectrum of things. So there are artists that make great work that has the spirit in it, but by and large, it's kind of been excised from the contemporary art scene.
Mm. Well, I'm sure that the contemporary art scene can also be very competitive today, right? And people often try to do things that they feel are going to be popular, or
Yeah,
uh,
unfortunately, that whole world lives in a model of scarcity. And
mhm,
we know there's no such thing as that. There's abundance everywhere. But that only works because there's a certain number of people controlling the art world, the art market, and ultimately what you and I see generally when we go to most museums or in the art sphere, all these same artists keep popping up because they're funded by a handful of galleries that control the entire art world. And
mm.
they have a completely different uh, focus, and it's fine. It's
It's a
capitalism.
business.
What
It's
it
a
is.
business.
It's
People,
business. Yeah, but I
um,
think at the same time it limits people's
definitely.
experiences,
It's not.
and
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
that's what I have a problem with. I don't care about capitalism, where that's the world we live in, but
Yeah.
what happens is they are limiting our ability for our consciousness to expand.
That's very interesting. That's really interesting because, everything is like you say. I mean, we have to live in this world
Right.
and we have to make a living. And, but I think you have followed your heart and you have worked with your heart and you've been successful as a result.
Thank
And
you.
sometimes I think that people maybe try to do things, and even not even just in art, it could be anything, try to
Yeah.
do things because they're
Oh,
gonna
there's
make money.
so many pressures,
It's
it's
hard.
yeah.
Well, let me ask something. What do you tell young people that want to be artists? What it because you say, like, you've taught classes, and
Yeah.
you've taught in
Yeah,
universities.
what I tell people is find what you're really good at and don't care what anybody else says about it. That's it.
Mm, mm,
Literally, don't literally care anything about what anybody says about your work, good or bad,
mm.
because therein lies the anticipation, and that starts screwing with your process. Find what you do that's really, really good. That's like your voice, whatever it is that it just you can't not do, and
Yeah.
just do it. Obviously, it has to be good, and that comes with repetition, practice, skill, and make a good product experience. But outside of that, everything else is a subjective thing. So you need to please yourself first in making work. That's the
Yeah.
number one component.
And when you're influenced, when you're getting just influenced by, I mean, you've said you've been influenced by ideas, and that's
Yeah.
a whole different thing,
You have to be careful with what your influences are. You can't just be influenced by every willy-nilly this and that.
Yeah.
You got to focus and read and really look at what's come before you. Have an idea of what's come before you so that you can make a educated guess to your best probability of what you can do that you're not repeating. Because when I look back and look at what I'm making and how it's kind of fits in the art world, who else is doing kind of what I'm doing? Not really. Like maybe one or two other people are kind of doing something similar, but not really. I mean, I would say not bragging or
Yeah.
whatever, but I would say, like, my particular history and living in India and here and kind of mixing these different elements together and different mediums as well as studies kind of gives my work a very specific flavor, and it's unique because of that and my experiences. So, with people, if they want to learn and what they're doing, kind of pick things that are unique to your background, your flavor, the things that kind of make it like, puts your touch to it. But again, you really need to read and go to all the art fairs and see what other people are doing and kind of gauge, is your work good? That's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be like, oh, is it, commercial or whatever. It just has to be good, because that's kind of the only gauge we have in life. Because if you're making work for some other thing, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, and that's the key. If you're
Yeah.
not fulfilled, it's going to show.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me a little bit of when I started out in TV and public TV, and that's where I worked my whole life basically
Mhm.
until I retired for WLRN. And the whole uh, the whole game then was like to look at somebody that was your role model.
Mhm.
And there was somebody that was,
Yeah.
well, you probably know, Barbara Walters, and
Okay.
everybody wanted to be like Barbara
Yeah.
Walters. And
Yeah.
so I found myself starting to interview people, trying to be like her,
Mhm.
ask the tough questions,
Sure.
be aggressive, but
Mhm.
totally not like me. I don't,
Mhm.
I just wasn't an aggressive kind of person.
Sure.
And
Sure.
when I was like that, people go, "Oh, that's really good. You were like Barbara Walters." And I was so proud. But I realized pretty early on, and had to do with the meditation too,
Mhm.
meditating and getting involved with, spiritual path with the Brahma Kumaris. I realized I wasn't myself. I wasn't authentic. I mean, I was
Sure.
at some level,
Yeah.
I was interested, but I wasn't really who. And when I started to realize that, and I stopped, I just stopped that because there was only one Barbara Walters.
Mhm.
And we can be influenced by people. Like you said, we're influenced by everything, and that's
Sure.
okay, but not to try to duplicate something that's
Yeah,
been.
right. I mean, we can't go through life without being influenced. I mean, some of my early influences are Nam June Paik, David Lynch, so, you've got these people that have, quite a bit of following, and they have a very
Yeah,
specific way they approach the world, but they're very unique individuals. So,
that's
you
good influence. That's
you can
good
kind of
influence.
see what they're up to and see how they approach the process, and then you can kind of try to figure out how do they approach this, where how are they, how are they creating this magic? Ultimately,
Mm,
what we do in the world, whatever we do, it's all magic in a way that we even exist. You could say it's magic. I mean, it's lots of probability, right.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's also metaphysical, alchemical, and magical at the same time.
Well, I love that word magical. And that's actually, I might have even said it at the beginning. That's what I felt,
Yeah.
when I did see your exhibition, I felt the magic. There was just,
Yeah,
like I said,
this
I didn't want to
this
leave,
exhibit took like 2 years to put together, and I got to say I'm thrilled with it, but it's also taken a lot out of me. So I'm also just kind of taking it easy and chilling right now and enjoying all the feedback I'm getting, as well as just kind of working on traveling more and just working on some smaller pieces and not like committing to anything big, because it's kind of like 2 years of my life, and then now I'm like, okay, I need to just kind of chill for a bit.
You need a
Enjoy.
break. Yeah, you
Yeah,
need a
taking
break, a
like
refresh.
your
Right.
background there, that looks like a great alpine village to visit.
Well, it wasn't done on purpose, actually, though I was there this summer. What happened was I'm getting some work done on my house, and so there's no background really that you would want to use, or painting going on,
Yeah,
and some scaffolding or some stuff.
yeah,
And at the last second today, I mean, I realized it before, but I was looking for my pictures quickly, and I said, "Oh, nature." He's
yeah,
going to be talking about nature. It's a little
yeah.
bit,
And I was just in the Smoky Mountains. I
yeah.
just got back a couple of
Oh,
days ago, and that was great. Just being able to be. I mean, in Florida here, everything's flat, and yeah, we have the ocean and streams and creeks, but like it's nothing like the forest that I really miss, because I used to live in San Francisco, and we used to go out to Yellowstone and Sierra Nevadas, all of that, and it's a different, mind.
it's a different vibe. I
It's a
lived in the
different vibe.
Northwestern Oregon for a few years
Oh
before I
yeah,
went into television, and I know what you're saying. There is something, and it doesn't have to be the West. I mean, it can be, and that's
yeah.
probably so
Yeah,
powerful. But
the Cascades are great. We lived in Seattle too for a
oh, you
while. So
did? Okay, I lived, yeah,
it,
around Eugene in
yeah,
the Three Sisters
yeah,
Wilderness. I worked in, and yeah, so I know that feeling, which connects to what we're talking about, because I know
mhm,
that you're so into people getting more in tune with nature.
right,
And I know that that has, it's not just about getting in touch with nature, but you really are, you know, committed to people being aware, of our environment, and what
right.
can we
And
do,
yeah,
to
with the
heal it.
exhibit, it's kind of like I want to draw people in to care about nature, and I don't want to hit them over the head about like forests are burning and icebergs are melting. That's already happening. It's on the news every day. But I try to present our environmental issues kind of gently, so that people will be thinking about what's going on, and maybe they can kind of figure out some other change behavioral patterns to kind of alleviate what is happening. I mean, it's just getting hotter and hotter every year. So
I mean, they predicted this so many years ago, and
yeah,
did the world listen?
no,
And I
no.
can't blame
Well, it's
anyone.
an existential threat that's like over the hill, and no one can plan for that. It's just always over the hill until suddenly there's a forest that's burning like right next door, and then it's an issue. But it's a hard thing to grasp, because we the scale of nature is so big that a lot of people definitely have trouble believing we've made some drastic changes in such a short time. And I kind of like to point out to people, like, back in the 1800s, all the old, Monets and Monets that you see with like the dusky uh harbor views.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like just pretty light. They're painting pollution.
Mm,
You
mm.
think about what they're actually seeing. They're painting pollution. It just looks like a rosy, dusky picture. Why is it like that? Because they had so much steam and coal burning at the time.
The
It was just
cold,
kind of
right?
everywhere.
People didn't live so well in those. We always think the good old days, but a lot of
Yeah,
people really, really suffered, didn't they?
right, right.
They
And it's
really,
kind of
really.
like the dawn of the industrial age and all these romanticized notions of it. And then, we've had evidence of the Anthropocene and like these paintings from, the 18th, 19th century, and you don't really think, oh wait, that's actually pollution that's being
Oh,
depicted by these modern masters. So, it comes
yeah,
up once in a while in like geeky talk among curators and stuff, but most people don't make the
interesting.
connection.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think the time is now, and I do see a big push with people I know of all ages, people being much more careful and wanting to do something. And sometimes you think, well, I'm one person, what can I do, But one person is another person and another person,
Yeah.
and that's to me like even your exhibition, people will walk
Yeah,
out
all I
and they
can say is you are the
change.
captain of your own ship, and you've got to like make those choices. And if everyone can make better choices, then there you go. That's our answer.
Yeah, and I wanted to just close on just the fact that you grew up in India, but you moved
Mhm.
here. You were quite young, but you weren't
Yeah,
young. You were, already. Were you 10 or
I was like
12?
8. I think I
Eight,
ate
10.
when I moved
So
here. Yeah.
then you moved to America, and so do you see yourself as kind of like both cultures, both
Yeah,
countries?
it's funny because my mom was in the army, and I was an army brat. So when I moved here, and then I lived in Germany and Korea, just kind of like all over the Northeast and the West Coast, kind of. So it's interesting because I kind of view myself as like an occupant of Earth, and sometimes it's hard for me to know where am I from. I really literally don't know where I'm from sometimes. I'm just kind of like, "Oh, I've been here for a while. I guess I'm from here." But again, trying to find some place, I think everyone wants that idea of being rooted. And I've just kind of come to the stage where, the rooting part of it is like where family is, or where your friends are, or the friends that become your family, that kind of thing. As long as you have some kind of a good support network of friends, family, that makes it more home.
Beautiful.
And that's kind of the key thing too, because just having those connections.
Is that what drew you to Hollywood? Because you're a resident of Hollywood now. I don't know for how many years, but right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we moved here in 2013, and my mom actually just recently, well, not recently, maybe 5, 6 years ago, bought a house in Davie, so we're pretty close to each other. So it's
Nice.
it's working out.
Very
I
nice.
mean, if it keeps getting hotter, I may have to move. I don't know. It's just like the weather here is just
It's getting, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds silly to complain about the weather, but it's
It's
how it
tough.
is. Yeah,
But it is, other things are happening all over the country and all over the world, there's flooding, there's this, there's that. I mean,
yeah.
it's like we might go. I remember once I read some article about one of the big hurricanes years ago, and the woman left one place to get away from the hurricane, and she went to another state, and there was a hurricane there, and then she went somewhere else, and it was like a
Mm,
different hurricane, and
mm.
it was an interesting story. Like she kept trying to run away and she couldn't, there was something. So I guess again, we have to follow whatever that instinct tells us, that
So,
inner.
and sometimes that instinct gets buried, or you don't know where it is, or it goes on vacation, and then you got to find it again. And again, trying to like go to a space, like sometimes I go back to that exhibit of mine, and I just go because I'm like, every time I go there, it's different, just because the way I organized all the video playback and the sounds, they keep even surprising me. And for me to go to my own exhibit to be surprised by my own work makes it like, okay, it's successful, because it could even surprise me because I've spent so much time with it. I know what to expect, but the way I actually put it together was also very um improvisational in a way,
Mm.
because I knew what I needed to do in terms of the elements that needed to go there, but the ultimate installation, I had an idea, but I didn't stick to like a very specific plan. I really kind of felt out the space. We had 2 weeks to install it, so I really kind of went in there with my whole heart and soul and just kind of felt the way that it made, like literally, I want to say I designed a space that would be the most optimal for people to feel safe and to be able to wander and meditate and just kind of have their minds expand while you're there. And also the way I put it together was there's an area for installation, and and there's an area that there's just sculptures and paintings and drawings and assemblage work. So
Some little displays of things,
yeah,
little
I
items.
put it together in a way where, if you like one kind of medium, you can go to a certain area, get that. If you like a full experience, the whole thing is an experience. If you just want to hear sound, there's a sound component. So in a way, I teased apart all these different mediums so that sometimes people have a preference to how they want to take in information. I wanted to make sure I met every individual at that level, as well as there's a central pyramidal TP-like structure that you can go into. It has a ramp, so if you're in a wheelchair, you can go in there too and experience that. And there's another area where there's a table with assemblage and artwork put on a low table. So again,
Yes.
that's designed for people. If you're in a wheelchair, you can kind of get the feeling of how it really should be, because I'm kind of thinking about like kids, people in wheelchairs, any special needs. I mean, you can experience the whole thing, whichever however you're coming, because I really feel it important that, you know, all humanity needs to be able to experience it. You know, even if you can't see, you can feel it
Yeah.
as well.
Well, interesting that you're saying that, because the last person that we had on the program was she's the head of the blind school
Mhm.
in Miami,
Mhm.
and she is blind, and she became blind at 45 years old.
Wow.
And Virginia Jacko, and she's an amazing woman. She, at 45, she was an executive. You could see it on the, you know, on our conversations with friends. It was one of the most moving interviews, because she was so bright when, and they saw she had been the head of finance at Purdue University, and she went blind in her 40s.
Wow.
And she came to Miami just to learn how to live with blindness. And then what happened was they saw how brilliant she was. They put her on the board, and then there was the job opening came to be the CEO and the executive. They made her the head. So here she's running this gigantic organization, you know. It's called the Lighthouse for the Blind.
Okay.
And it's something you should go visit one day. You know, it's gotten bigger and bigger. She has a whole school and musicians and art classes, everything. I mean, it's quite amazing. She says that she said something like she's totally content being blind. Like and look at all the people she's helped as a result.
Yeah.
You know, and so sometimes I think maybe people that aren't so busy looking at everything too, and I don't read about art, but we're just so caught up in things, you know, that maybe even if we spent less time looking at others and looking at how people look and what they wear, and, you know,
It's focus. Yeah, it's like what is important and what is just not important, and it's so difficult to do in contemporary society.
Yes, because there's so much, you know, coming at us.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pleasure to get to interview you. I could talk with you all day.
Sure.
You have so much to share, and I just hope people will get to know you through your work. Again, it's at the Boca Raton Museum of Art, and it's Sri Prabha that I've been talking with about this amazing installation. And as I said at the beginning, and we've said, it's not just, I mean, all art exhibitions are, you know, they have something to offer, but this is about getting something different and experience.
And there's also two other artists on at the same time.
And they're good too.
So Sari Deans, she was a painter from the 50s, 60s. She has some amazing work. The whole show, the three main artists that are on the first floor, is about the spirit lives in everything, and she had coined that phrase. She was like a contemporary of Rothko. So, you know, again, she's got some amazing work, and I didn't really know about her because she was a woman artist. You know, the club excluded her during that time. So really check out her work. And
I
also,
did. I loved it. It's like, yeah, they're beautiful pieces.
Matthew really. Schreiber makes these laser hologramic images, really amazing. Again, another way of looking at nature and how we take space in it. So really, it's like you're getting 3 for the price of 1 shows, and it's on until October 22nd. And it's a great show. Like all 3 artists, the works all go together, and they're very unique in the way each artist relates to nature and spirit, which is totally like, I don't think anyone else has done that kind of theme that I can remember. So it's a really great show, and it's up until the 22nd of October. So like really like check.
So there's time. There's time to see the exhibition. Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure getting to interview.
Pleasure meeting you, Meredith, and thank you for
continued success in just making the world see things that maybe they wouldn't have seen otherwise. And
thank you.
And having that experience, that inner experience, you know. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you, everybody.